Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another recent reads update for you all. I have been reading pretty consistently, which I'm really happy about, and not everything I'm reading is bad, so that's pretty good. The lighting might be kind of weird for this one. I'm trying a different angle. I don't have a ring light or anything like that right now, so we're making it work. But yes, I have 6 more books to talk about. Let's start with the one physical thing that I have recently read, and that is In the Shadows of Blackbirds by Kat Winters. This is a historical horror paranormal YA book. So in this book we follow a character named Mary Shelley, named after Mary Shelley, and she's recently moving from, I want to say, Oregon to live with her aunt who lives in the California, Southern California area. It does take place during the Spanish influenza, also 1918, so we're also dealing with World War I. And her father has recently been arrested for saying and doing some things that are un-American at the time. He was helping people dodge the draft, so she's gonna go live with her aunt for the foreseeable future to see until what happens with her dad and all that kind of thing. She also goes through this kind of life-changing event that kind of makes her rethink her stance on ghosts. Spiritualism is a huge concept in this book, something that's talked about a lot, and she doesn't believe in spirits and ghosts and stuff, even though it's really popular, and a lot of people that you see in this book are very much into it. She's not really a believer until she has this kind of thing happen to her. Also, one of her childhood friends who ended up being her first boyfriend does go off to war and he passes away. A lot of this book has to do with mourning loved ones, PTSD, sickness, obviously, spiritualism, a lot of stuff like that. This book was really trippy to read because they are also dealing with a worldwide pandemic, and seeing people so cautious about this flu, it hit me in a weird way, because I know in where I live, thankfully people were really careful about wearing masks and making sure everyone was healthy and stuff. In my area we didn't really have a lot of anti-masker type stuff. We have it's a lot of families and elderly where I live, so not a lot of problems. So it was really it was looking in a mirror sometimes. But obviously in the United States we have a huge anti-vax, anti-mask population. It's so weird reading about everyone's so committed to staying healthy, and even so paranoid that they're eating onions and bathing in onion juice and all this kind of stuff, but also knowing that there are sometimes people that don't take it seriously or just think it's a hoax or whatever. It was just so trippy to read that. There's also just a lot of discussion on how America approaches war. It touches on propaganda. It touches on how we put the lives of very, very young people on the front lines and for what, that type of thing. Just a lot of topics that were touched on that I really enjoyed seeing in a kind of book that's aimed for a younger audience. I really enjoyed it. I want to read more ghost stories. It doesn't necessarily have to be scary, but I just like ghosts as a concept. But yeah, I would give this a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I'm really sad that it's a standalone. I feel I understood her and I grasped her pretty well. She also, her aunt, I also really enjoyed her as well. So I read another historical fiction. This one's more on the mystery, and this is A Spy in the House by Y.S. Lee. I think this is the first book in the Agency series. I kind of picked this up just on a whim because it was available now from my library to read. There's no hold or anything. In this book we follow a young girl. I think her name's Mary as well. This takes place during the 1850s. When she's really young, Mary gets invited to this home for young girls. This home encourages young women to be independent, so it teaches them skills like bookkeeping, secretarial skills, stuff like that. But also as she gets older, she finds out that this home that she lives at also has this kind of espionage school system thing for young women, and they're kind of contracted out from Scotland Yard. This is not the first time I've read espionage in a Victorian school. And in this book we follow Mary in her first official mission as an espionage agent. I thought this was okay overall. I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. The story itself isn't super amazing, but I did enjoy my time with it. It was fun and entertaining, and that's pretty much all I kind of look for in these kind of very casual, chill mystery novels. Our character is of Chinese descent, and that kind of comes up every now and then because she doesn't present as Asian. I think she's Scottish or Irish on her mother's side, but most people kind of assume that she's something, and this is their words, but exotic, Spanish or Italian or something. So that kind of comes up a lot, and that was probably the strongest aspect of this book, is our characters exploration of herself in this setting. Every now and then after I finish a book, I might like look at reviews to kind of help form my own thoughts, because for this review I was kind of like, I don't really know what to say. It was like an average book, it's like whatever, but one review did stick out because they said that it was unbelievable that these characters are, especially our main character, is so independent given the time period, which is true. In this time period, I don't imagine a woman, she would do like half of the things that Mary does in this book. But like, if you like willingly pick up a book about a 17-year-old girl who is like an espionage agent in training in the 1850s, like you kind of like have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Her being independent is like not that big of a deal, but I don't know. That's just me. I'm going to continue on with YA since I'm already like on it. I read 5 Total Strangers by Natalie D. Richards. This is on the thriller side. It's also contemporary. In this book we follow Mira, who is going home for the holidays to visit her mother. She lives with her father for school in California, but I think she's like flying to Pittsburgh, I want to say. The previous holiday season, her aunt, her mother's sister, passed away like right on Christmas or Christmas Eve, one of those two, and so it's going to be like a weird time for her and her mother. She was very close to her aunt. Obviously they also want to celebrate Christmas, so she really wants to get back home to her mother. Unfortunately, there is kind of like a weather event happening at the moment, so when she gets off her like connecting flight, she's told that like there are no flights to get her to Pittsburgh, so she's kind of like, I don't really know what to do. And then the girl that she was sitting next to on the plane is like, well, we can just rent a car and we'll like hitch a ride together with a few other strangers. Yeah, that's pretty much the plot of the book. Honestly, I find this one a little bit like more unbelievable than the last one, purely because like as a young woman traveling alone, like I feel like your defenses are like more up. I personally would not hitch a ride with strangers, even if they were my age, which they are in this book. She's a senior in high school, and some of the people that she hitches a ride with are like undergraduates in university, so they're kind of in a similar age range. I gave this 3 stars. There wasn't anything really like thrilling, like over the top thrilling about it. They are for the most part in a car driving on a road for the entirety of the book, so I guess the author maybe had trouble making it as exciting as you could. Pretty quickly things go wrong, things go missing. Yeah, I can't really say much more than that because I would start like spoiling stuff. I do think that you can get through this pretty quickly. I will say that the author did do a pretty good job at like putting the blame on every single person. Throughout the book I was like, I'm pretty sure this one stranger in the car is supposed to be like the bad guy, but then like maybe 2 chapters later I'd like turn my attention to someone else, so I really did feel like as paranoid as our main character probably would have been. So the next book I also gave 3 stars, but it's like a lower 3 stars than the other 3 stars. Like this one was like barely scratching 3 stars, and that is The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. This is a YA fantasy adventure queer romance. This is a kind of reimagining, retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story. In this book we have 2 women who are like treasure hunters. We have Fee, who is like a very bookish person who like really goes on treasure hunts for like the like knowledge that she can acquire. She's not really in it for the riches. We also have Shane, who is like the more like tough as nails person who like really wants the treasure. Both of these characters are kind of running from a unfortunate past that they have. Both of them go on this like adventure treasure hunt thing that kind of gets them embroiled in the Sleeping Beauty curse. Briar Rose, who's a young boy, I think he's like 16 or 17, he pricked his finger on like the spindle wheel and he like fell into his cursed sleep, and that was like 100 years prior, and like both of them are like now in it to like wake him up. There's like evil witches. It's an adventure thing. Shane is a queer character. I don't think Fee is, so there's also that aspect as well. I gave this like a low 3 stars because I was never like really into this story. Like it all felt very surface level and just like not fun, very bland. The tagline is Indiana Jones meets Sleeping Beauty. Like yes, like on a surface level that is correct, but I just like wasn't really into this at all. I think honestly this is more me because like this is so like YA vibes that I just can't, like it's just not for me. I'm like 26, so like, but for this one I just this is like the YA that I just don't choose to read anymore. I think I've just like outgrown this like YA fantasy romance, and the fantasy romance was just as like heavy-handed as like the fantasy adventure. I think this is definitely more of a me thing, I think, overall. So I did read another SFF romance, but for adults, and that was Barbarian's Treasure by Ruby Dixon. This is like book 19 in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I used to read these all the time, and I took a little bit of break from reading these books just to like kind of catch my breath with the series a little bit. But if you're not familiar with the series, this is about a group of women who get abducted from Earth by a group of like bad aliens for like human trafficking purposes, but they crash land on this very, very cold, icy planet. A group of like good aliens find them and kind of just like give them like a home for themselves. They're probably never gonna get off this planet, so they gotta make the best of the situation. It is romance at the end of the day, and it's very graphic if you're not aware of that already. So in this book we follow Megan, who's one of the original group of girls who first crash landed here. Her story hasn't been told yet. The author kind of jumps around until and tells the story that she feels like writing at the moment. Megan never really stood out, but I'm really glad that the author like chose to tell every woman's first like romantic story. And I thought it was like fine overall. There's no great drama with these two characters, which is kind of like the point going in, that on surface level it seemed like really, really great, but there's just a little bit of like romantic issues that they were having. It's not a big deal. It's very much like a fluffy, cute romance, which is exactly what I wanted. I gave it 3 stars. That being said, there's a aspect of her perspective of her story that I was happy that the author kind of touched on. A big part of the story is that the aliens that live on this planet are a dying race. There isn't really many females left. It's just a group of mostly men, and so the women who crash land on this planet like know this and go into it knowing that a big motivation for these aliens to welcome these human women is for procreation. Not to say that they don't treat these women like really, really well. Our main character Megan really worries at the fact that this is the only reason why they keep them safe and with them and like feed them and clothe them and all that kind of stuff. And she's always kind of questioning like the space that she takes up with these people. She's kind of just like worried like they'll turn her out into the cold if she like does anything wrong, which they never would have, but she obviously doesn't know that when they first crash land. So I'm glad that the author touched upon that, because that didn't seem to be something that the other girls brought up in their point of view. And the last book I want to talk about is probably the most surprising one, and that is Finley, Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. This book has been praised a whole lot by like the mystery thriller community. I was interested in reading this, but like I didn't really have high expectations because it did feel kind of just like another like cozy mystery, which is fine. I've read a few of these like cozy type mysteries before in the past, and they were always kind of just like whatever. I don't really enjoy when like characters kind of just stumble onto like the story, and it's just like why do you even want to like involve yourself in a murder mystery? But I really enjoyed this one way more than I thought I would. In this book we follow our main character. She's a single mother to 2 children, and she's also a struggling author. She hasn't written the book that her agent's like begging her to finish writing. She doesn't want to break contract with her publisher either, because she already like took her first advance and like spent it all. Her husband is like thinking about taking the children like permanently, so she might also have to hire a like family lawyer, bills to pay. She's just struggling. So one day she goes to Panera Bread with her agent, and they're talking about her book. She writes romantic suspense, so the language that she's using with her agent is like kind of sus from the outsider's perspective, so much so that someone overhears her conversation and like assumes that she is a hit woman because of what they were talking about. So someone kind of like slips her a note and is like, hey, murder my husband and I'll give you like $50,000 or something. And you can imagine how the story progresses from there. I really enjoyed this. I did not know how appealing these characters were gonna be. Specifically our main character and her babysitter kind of gets wrapped up in this as well, the nanny. I just really enjoyed this. The characters are so like, I just love them. I don't know if it's like a critique, but more so an observation. A lot of things just fall into place luckily for our main character, and I pretty quickly kind of acclimated myself to that. If I didn't, I'd probably get annoyed that like, oh, of course she gets away with this again because she's super lucky or whatever. I think it's part of this genre probably that things just happen easier for our protagonist. I really enjoyed this. I read it on Kindle Unlimited, but I think I don't have that subscription service anymore, so I'm gonna have to like wait for my library to like its hold to get lifted, because everyone's like reading these books because they're so good. I gave this one like a 4 out of 5 stars. So those are the books I recently read within the past week or so. Feel free to talk to me in the comments about anything that I've talked about. If you've read any of these books, if you enjoyed them or not enjoyed them, if I introduced you to some of these books. I like to hear anything you have to say down below. I will also link my social medias and some far more important links down below. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.